Okay, are we live?
And we're live.
Great. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for our Small Business Grants webinar. As you all know too well, this year has been incredibly difficult for our small business owners. My team and I have heard from hundreds of you who are working hard to keep your doors open throughout the pandemic. I appreciate everyone who has spoken to me and reached out to my office with their thoughts and their concerns. Your feedback and your ideas have been invaluable as I advocate for additional relief in Washington to make sure that what we're putting forward will actually tackle the problems facing you, your businesses, and our communities and make a difference. Today, we're hosting this webinar to help provide more information on New Jersey's Phase 4 Small Business Emergency Assistance Grant Program. This program will use $85 million in federal CARES Act money to provide up to $20,000 in grants to small and medium-sized businesses and nonprofits. These businesses can range from restaurants, micro businesses, childcare providers, and much more. We have a great panel of guests with us today, and I'd like to thank them for being part of this event. First, we'll hear from Tim Sullivan, CEO of the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, for an introduction to the program. Thanks, Tim, again for joining us and for all the work NJEDA has been doing to support small businesses throughout the pandemic. And then we'll have Elizabeth Lindbrick from the NJEDA, who will give us an overview of the Phase 4 program and application process. John Costello, a senior policy advisor with the NJEDA, is also here to help answer your questions. Then Kelly Brosna from the New Jersey Small Business Development Center will give an overview of how their organization can assist small businesses. Once the presentations are over, they will be able to spend some time answering questions from audience members. I'm going to need to sign off here in a minute, but I'm going to leave you in expert hands. I'm pleased to see the COVID relief packages we passed is continuing to make a difference in our state and providing relief to our small businesses. I know there's still more to do. This funding will be bolstered by the small business relief provisions in the American Rescue Plan. That package includes $28.6 billion to create a restaurant revitalization fund at SBA to offer assistance to restaurants and bars with 20 or fewer locations that have been hit hard by the pandemic. It also provides $7.25 billion in additional funding for PPP to help small businesses stay open. As always, my office is here to assist you with any issues you might have. Chris Williams and Cora Present are here from our casework team, so feel free to contact my office anytime we can be of assistance at 973-526-5668. That's 973-526-5668. You can also follow me on Facebook or Twitter, where we post updates regularly, including announcements for events like this. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris to get the panel started. Thank you again for joining us today. Stay safe and take care.
Thank you, Congresswoman. And for our audience, before we turn it over to the panel, we are happy to take your questions. You can use the chat feature at the bottom of your screen to answer your question, and we will get those towards the end of the panel. If there are any that we don't get to, we're happy to follow up with our friends at the NJEDA and get you that answer after the presentation is over. And with that, I'll turn it over to Colvin. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris, and thank you to Congresswoman Sherrill and her team for hosting this, for convening this. I think we've done any number of webinars and panels and calls since the onset of this crisis with Congresswoman and her team. Hard to think of someone who's been more dedicated and on it with regard to small business throughout this crisis as part of the federal delegation. So deeply appreciative of Congresswoman Sherrill and her leadership, and appreciative of her support for bringing all this federal money home to New Jersey, where we can put it to good use with programs like this. On behalf of Governor Murphy and our entire team inside the administration, I just want to first of all thank folks for taking the time to listen in on a pretty sunny and beautiful, at least where I am, Friday afternoon. Which means that if you're taking the time to be on this call, if this is important to you, and it's because you're probably one of the many small businesses that are continuing to have a hard time dealing with this economic crisis that's spawned by this virus. Governor Murphy has been clear from the outset that obviously first and foremost, this is a public health crisis, but right behind it, it's an economic crisis, and it's an economic crisis that is disproportionately affecting small businesses. And like the public health crisis itself is disproportionately affecting businesses owned by people of color and women in particular. And so when we think about how we're prioritizing and deploying these funds and seeking to deploy these funds, that's front and center of our mind. So you heard the Congresswoman talk about some of the priorities and categories within the funding, and a couple of my teammates from the EDA will walk through the details in a moment. But when we think about things like targeting micro businesses with 5 employees and fewer, that's a really intentional effort at equity and inclusion in this funding. Lots of federal programs are well-meaning and are great, but they don't often reach as deep into particularly the minority communities as we would hope they would. And we're trying to be top of the pack in that regard. Something like 90% of New Jersey's minority-owned businesses are some form of micro business. So when we talk about targeting micro businesses, we're talking about targeting equity and inclusion and diversity in our programs here. The thing I'll mention, and I'm sure Elizabeth and John, my great colleagues, and I think Rich Kasman is on as well, we'll mention probably 30 times. I'll be the first, but there'll be 30 or 40 other repetitions of this. You have to pre-register for this grant program. Pre-registration is open right now. It's been open since Monday morning. It'll be open until Thursday afternoon about this time. Pre-registration is not first come, first serve, but you have to pre-register. If you have not pre-registered by next Thursday at 5 o'clock, you cannot apply for the grant. You can call us on the morning the grant application opens. We'll be pleasant and polite, but there won't be much we can do for you. You've got to pre-register and get yourself pre-registered ahead of time. It will make the application process, by the way, a lot smoother for you as well. This is $85 million of again, federal money that the legislature approved, I believe, unanimously, and Governor Murphy signed into law over the last a couple weeks in 4 or 5 different bills. So we're working hard to get this money on the street expeditiously but prudently. And so we are eager to tell you more about the program. And with that, I'll hand it back to, handing it back to Chris, or straight to Elizabeth, or I'll hand it to Chris, you're the MC here. So
just real quick, thank you to those who flagged my audio issues. Hopefully you can hear me better now, but I just want to reiterate, if you do have questions, you can use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to get to those at the end of the presentation. If there's any that we don't get to, we're happy to follow up with you after the presentation and get you some answers and work with the NJEDA on that. With that, I will hand it over to Elizabeth for an overview of the program.
Thank you very much, Chris, and thank you, Tim, and thank you to Representative Sherrill as well. You know, as you have said, you know, there's a lot of need out there for small businesses, and you know, really think we have to thank our delegation in DC, in particular, like you said, Congresswoman Sherrill, for getting this money for small businesses and getting this money into New Jersey. And you know, under Governor Murphy's leadership, putting this money to good work for small businesses. We at EDA have launched this Phase 4 Small Business Emergency Assistance Grant. And what I'll say here on this particular slide is that prior to this Phase 4, we have already processed over 55,000 awards since COVID began, and provided over $250 million in support as well. And we have a whole suite of programs, and I'll talk to you about those on the next slide. But what I will tell you is that, you know, this has been a lot of need that we have seen, and you know, we really are working hard to get that money out to those of you who are in need. So this is some of the programs that we have put together specifically related to the COVID-19 emergency relief packages. And really the one on top is essentially the one that we're kind of talking about here today. So those are the first 3 phases, if you see that, what we have done so far. And then we also have done other programs, loans. We have Sustain and Serve, which is operating now. You may have heard about that, particularly in the news as well. And we've had other programs, small and micro business. And just, you know, the point is that we recognize that there are a lot of different needs out there, and we're crafting programs to target those specific needs. All right, so as Tim mentioned, probably the most important thing you will hear today is you must pre-register by April 29th at 5 p.m. no less. Okay, so if you take nothing else away from today, make sure you take that away. If you do not pre-register, you will not have an opportunity to apply for the grant. So this is actually basically a two-step process. First, you pre-register, and that part is not first come, first serve, as Tim mentioned. That particular part of the program, you have time. You have between now and April 29th to get all the information together. Take your time, fill out the pre-registration form. Make sure you're accurate, get the numbers right. If the information isn't right at your fingertips, go grab it, look it up. And I think that will greatly help you. We have moved a lot of the information that we've learned over the time that we've launched these other phases, because the application portion is first come, first serve. We wanted to move as much information as possible from the application back to the pre-registration, so that, again, you have time to think about it and to be careful as you put your information in, because again, the pre-registration is not first come, first serve. However, the application is first come, first serve. And so again, after you come in and you put in your pre-registration, you will come back, and we show you on the next slides, I think, the exact days that you come back. But some other kind of high level points here is that this program is available to just about any small business in the state of New Jersey that has 50 or fewer full-time equivalent employees. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that is. The size of this program is $85 million. Tim mentioned, that we are working to address equity issues, diversity, and what we're doing is we're putting 33% of the funds available aside for businesses that are located in what are called opportunity zone eligible census tracts. And those are not necessarily the ones that have been designated, but we've opened it up wider to those that were eligible to be designated. And we do have a mapping tool on our website. But you don't have to worry about it too much, because we'll determine whether or not you are in one of those census tracts based on the address that you supply us on your registration and your application. Another point I wanted to make is that we have increased the grant size this time. So the grants are now up to $20,000. And again, Governor Murphy's commitment to that stronger, fairer recovery, we are allocating our support to, again, those most adversely affected businesses, including restaurants, which are getting 35 million we've allocated, childcare we've allocated 10 million. For micro businesses, we've allocated 25 million. And then for the other small businesses, which would be ones that don't fit into one of those buckets, but have between 6 and 50 full-time equivalent employees, we've allocated 15 million for those. So I don't know if I've mentioned this yet, but if I haven't, this is a very important point that I think many of you will be interested in hearing. Even if you have received a grant from us, from NJEDA, even if you've received a grant from us in the past, you are likely still eligible to receive a grant under this program. The only thing you would have to do differently is you have to be an eligible business, and we'll talk about what that is, and you would need to show us that you still have an unmet need. So assuming many of you actually have very large needs that have not yet been fully satisfied by the various assistance programs that are out there, you would be eligible. So I think that's a really important point. Another important point I wanted to make before we move forward is, again, it's very crucial to follow the process, pre-register, and again, we have a rolling application process after you pre-register. So again, you pre-register by April 29th. Information is available on our website. And once you have pre-registered, you will submit your pre-registration. You'll get instructions about when to come back. This is when you will come back. This is the information you'll be supplied. All of these are at 9 a.m. So first off, if you did not receive funding in our previous round, which we are calling phase 3, if you did not receive funding from phase 3, you get priority in this particular phase, because again, we're trying to target the funds to the businesses that need it most. So anyone who did not receive funding in phase 3 gets priority and gets to put their application in on May 3rd. And again, this part is first come, first served. And the other question that I sometimes get is, if I didn't apply for phase 3, can I still come in early? Yes. If you didn't apply, or you did apply and you didn't get funding, either way, you get to come in on May 3rd. I would also say the next part of this that we kind of get, come into the earliest date that you fit into on here. So if you're a restaurant, but you didn't get money before, you would come in on the earlier date of May 3rd. If you did get funding, then you would come in on the date associated with the type of business you are. So if you are a restaurant or childcare, that's May 5th. If you are a micro business, which we define as 1 to 5 full-time equivalent employees, you come in on May 10th. And then for those other small businesses, again, that's between 6 and 50 full-time equivalent employees, you come in on May 12th. I did want to make a point here that's kind of like a footnote on this slide. And I think we already saw one question come in on the chat there, was you have to have been in existence and operational by February 15th, 2020 to be eligible. And that's because this particular program is providing funds for your lost revenue. And, so we're really looking at, did you lose revenue due to COVID? And if the answer is yes, that's what this program is meant to fund. I think this slide is a little bit easier to read for me anyway. And I know everybody learns in different ways, but for me visually, this one's a little easier to understand. So I'm going to take you through this slide. And it has kind of the same information that you saw on the last slide. But the first question you would ask yourself, it's a flow chart, is were you approved for funding during phase 3? If the answer is no, then you come in again on May 3rd. If the answer is yes, then are you a child care provider or a restaurant? If the answer is yes, you come in on May 5th. If the answer is no, then does your business have 5 or fewer employees? If the answer is yes, you come in on May 10th. If the answer was no, you come in on May 12th. And it's just a different way of looking at the same information. I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this particular slide that is about restaurants. But that said, the reason I'm going to spend more time on this is because if you look on the left-hand side about the eligibility criteria, aside from that first bullet point, all of the others are the same eligibility criteria, whether you're a restaurant, a childcare, a micro business, or other small business. So I'm going to take you through what that eligibility criteria is on this slide. So first of all, this is, again, $35 million set aside for restaurants, and a third of that is set aside for Opportunity Zone eligible census tracts, and that's the case for each of these programs. For restaurants, we are giving grants of up to $20,000. And for each of these, you're going to see we're doing it by the number of full-time equivalent employees. Your grant award is going to be based on the number of employees that you have. And I'm going to say up to when we talk about the grant award, and that is only because if you can't show us that you have a need that is that great, then we wouldn't be able to give you the full grant award. But if you can show us that your need is at least this much, you would get the full grant award size. So a little bit about the eligibility. We're defining restaurants as those that have it's called a NAICS code, a North American Industry Classification System code. Those that have a NAICS code that start with the numbers 722, and that is a food services or drinking place. And we have more information on our website about how to look up and find what your NAICS code is. But you can also find it on your business registration certificate and other business documents as well. You also need to have a physical location in the state of New Jersey. And I think this is a good point, good spot to mention this as well. If you have multiple locations, it's going to depend on your EIN. So if you can apply for multiple grants if you have multiple EINs. If you have one EIN, you can apply for one grant. So each EIN can come in and apply for grants. So I did want to make sure I mentioned that as well. So you have to have your physical location in New Jersey. You have to be registered to do business in New Jersey, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. You have to be in good standing with the Department of Labor. You have to fill out and certify our debarment legal questionnaire. You have to certify that you had a negative impact due to the COVID emergency. And then you also have to certify that you do not intend to lay off any workers. And again, specific to the restaurant, you can come on, everybody has to pre-register by April 29th, but specific for restaurants, you would come back and complete and submit your application on May 5th. And that window for applications will only be open for a week. That is true of each of these different categories that we're going to talk about. They'll be open for 1 week. But again, they're first come, first serve. You want to be first in line. So you want to be ready with all the answers at your fingertips before really 9 a.m. on May 5th. You want to be ready at your computer as soon as that window opens. Now, specific to the childcare industry, again, we recognize there's a great need there. We've set aside $10 million for that particular program. Childcare providers were using the NAICS code 624410. So if that is your specific NAICS code, you would fall into this bucket. Childcare providers, we talk about having a physical location in New Jersey. That can either be like more of a corporate location, or it can be a home-based childcare provider. That's fine. For all of these, we actually accept home-based businesses as well, as long as you meet all of the other criteria that is mentioned in here. So the award sizes, again, 5 or fewer employees, 10,000, 6 to 25, 15,000, 26 to 50 is 20,000. And again, just like the restaurants, this opens on May 5th. Micro businesses is what we define as those really small businesses. So 1 to 5 employees. 1 employee, that you're a sole proprietor. You might not have any other employees. It might just be yourself. But as long as you can satisfy these other requirements, you are eligible for a grant as well. Now, if you remember, we talked about the grant sizes are based on the number of employees. Since micro businesses only go up to 5, it's just 1 grant size, which is up to that maximum of $10,000. For this particular program, we've set aside a large chunk of the money of $25 million. And again, these people come in on May 10th. And then the other small businesses that didn't fit into one of those other categories, so those between 6 and 50, we had $15 million set aside for that. And for those, it's 6 to 25 employees. Oops, let me go back. Can get 15,000, 26 to 50 can get 20,000. And another thing I hadn't mentioned yet as well that I did want to mention is nonprofits are also eligible for these grants. Now, this slide is where we start to get into a little bit of the more technical information, but I do want to take you through this. So first of all, we talk about having a sample application. The sample application is not yet up on our website, but it will be posted on our website in the coming days. I think we didn't want to cause confusion between pre-registration and application. So it may come up after we close the pre-registration period. You definitely want to take a look at this because again, you can then know all the questions that we're going to ask you and you can figure out what all the answers are. You can write them down in the little margins, however you want to do it. And then when you come back on the day that the application window opens, you have the information at your fingertips. So the kinds of things that we're going to be asking you, we're going to need your contact information, your primary business address, have it readily available. When I talk about your contact information, make sure you give us a really good email because that is how we will be reaching out to you. So if we have questions that we need to ask you, that's how we're going to reach you. If we're going to, be providing you funds, like this is how we're going to be contacting you. So make sure it's a good email and an email that you check. We do need to ask about if you have received other government assistance. So whether that's from us, from New Jersey Economic Development Authority, or maybe the federal government, maybe you received a Paycheck Protection Program loan, PPP, EIDL loan, or a grant, or perhaps you got something from the county or municipal government, even insurance. We need to know that because there's something in the federal system called duplication of benefits. And so we're using, again, that CARES funding that came from DC to support this program. And the federal government does not want to pay for the same expense twice. They do not want you double dipping. And I think, it's very reasonable. And so we just have to ask these questions to make sure that that's the case. Again, our particular program is replacing lost revenue. Some of the other things you'll need to know, you need to know, again, your business's full legal name. So that may not be the one that's out on your awning on your sign, but the one that you used when you registered with the state of New Jersey. You need to know what kind of entity you are, whether you're an S Corp or a sole proprietor, an LLC, what year you were established, your tax ID number. This next one's an important point. You need to know your peak full-time equivalent count from your past 8 quarters of WR30 filings. Again, if you recall, we're setting the award sizes based on the number of employees. And so we said, pick the highest one from the last 8 quarters, because that will maximize your grant amount. So that's why we chose to do it that way. And we do have a way to calculate that. And I have that on one of the slides later. So that if you have part-time employees, like how many part-time employees add up to a full-time equivalent, we have a wizard that you can use that will help you figure that out. We mentioned the NAICS code, make sure you have that, and you are going to need to let us know what your 2019 annual revenue was as well as your 2020, and you're going to have to demonstrate to us the revenue amount that you lost due to COVID-19. We also are going to be asking you for your business registration certificate. And we need to have that. We need to know that you're registered to do business in the state of New Jersey, as evidenced by your current registration status with the Department of Taxation, or Division of Taxation. One thing we changed in this phase was we recognized that there were businesses that didn't have this. And you all need to have this, but we didn't want to, not be able to support businesses just because they couldn't provide this piece of paper or certificate to us. And we wanted to bring people into compliance with New Jersey's rules and regulations. And we thought this was a good way to do it. So if you don't currently have that, we are going to give you 4 weeks from the time we reach out to you to satisfy that requirement to get us that certificate. But if you don't provide that, we will not be able to provide you a grant. This slide is something Tim had touched on about making sure, again, that we're reaching the minority and women-owned businesses, that we're making sure this is equitable as well, and increasing accessibility. So again, we talked about the Opportunity Zone census tracts. We do have a tool that you can look at to see if you are one. But I also really wanted to touch on this language assistance piece of it. My background is actually in environmental, and I do environmental justice, as well as all the other things I do at the EDA. And I think something I learned with working in environmental justice communities is that in New Jersey, we have a very diverse landscape of people, including small business owners, and a lot of people that came here from other countries, and English is not their primary language. And we want to be able to communicate to them in a way that is easy for them to understand and make them feel invited and feel like they're part of this, because they are. So we are providing the application and the pre-registration in both English and Spanish. And then in addition to that, we also have things like frequently asked questions, which, by the way, really good document. Go to the website, check out our frequently asked questions. There's a lot of good information there. And we have these important documents translated into an additional 10 languages over and above the English and the Spanish. And these are the languages most commonly spoken in New Jersey. In addition to that, for those of you who do speak another language, you can actually contact this email address, thelanguagehelp@njeda.com, and you'll receive a call within 1 business day from a representative who can then communicate to you in your primary language. And this is just a demonstration of what some of these documents might look like. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time taking you through the pre-registration process. We do have a video available that will take you through that. But again, the important point closes April 29th, 5 p.m. And then you do need to return to our portal for your application based on the schedule that we talked about earlier. The application is available on our portal, business.nj.gov/COVID. I wanted to throw 1 or 2 slides in here. So this is like what it would look like when you come in to do your pre-registration. And I put the link on this particular slide that will take you to NJEDA's YouTube page. So we have our own YouTube page. We have lots of cool videos on there, by the way. One of the cool videos we have on there takes you through this pre-registration process. We talked a little bit about this before, that again, we can't duplicate benefits because it's a federal program. And so we need to be aware of what other assistance you have received. Just because you've received other assistance does not mean you won't be eligible for this. So please don't think that. We just need to have a record of it and to be sure that we're not providing anything that would duplicate what you had already received. When you get to the end of the pre-registration, you'll see something that looks like this and this. And then after the fact, you will get an email from us, and you will see that, like on this, it has a pre-registration number. That's an important number. You'll want to make sure you know what that number is, and it'll tell you again, when you come back to put in your actual application. I mentioned before that we have a grant size estimator that helps you figure out how many full-time equivalent employees you have. So I think we'll put, you can find all of this on that same website. So I think it's probably already been put into the chat, but if not, we can get you that. What you do, you don't actually have to put the employee's name in. That's kind of just for your information, but you put down their quarterly wages, and we can then calculate based on the wages. And that's how we're doing it. It's based on wages, how many full-time equivalents that you have. And then if you also wanted to know how much you would be eligible for, we have this estimator as well. When you go to do your application, again, I highly recommend going to that website once the sample application is posted and downloading a copy of that and writing down all the questions and all the answers. But these are the kinds of questions that we will be asking. We really want to know what kind of impact your business has had because of COVID-19. So we're going to be asking questions like, were you deemed an essential business based on Executive Order number 107? If you're a nonprofit, what kind are you? Are you 501c3 or something different? If your business had to close, to what capacity was your business able to reopen? Very important, what was your revenue loss that was a result of COVID-19? Because again, that's what this program is designed to replace. And then what is your additional financial need as a result of COVID-19 after other COVID assistance? So we talked about what those other programs were. So even after all those other programs, you still have a need. What is that? And is that need our grant size, again, our grant cannot be more than what your need is. And then finally, we will be asking you how you will use these funds if they are approved. And I think, with that, I can pause. And I didn't know if we wanted to do questions right now, or if we wanted to jump over to Kelly, who can also help folks and talk about some of the finer points in there about like business registration certifications.
Thanks, Elizabeth. We're going to get to the bulk of the questions towards the end, but we have a number of people asking if these slides are available publicly. Is this information on your website as well?
It is available on our website. I think they can be downloaded from that COVID business portal that we talked about. And I think there's actually like a video recording of a similar presentation to this available on the YouTube site that I mentioned, our YouTube channel.
Great. And we have, if you registered with this webinar, we obviously have your email and we can follow up with, send that information out to you guys directly. So thank you, Elizabeth. We appreciate your info. That was really helpful. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kelly Brosna with the New Jersey Small Business Development Center. Kelly?
Thank you so much. And I want to thank Representative Sherrill for actually coordinating and putting this together with NJEDA. But also I want to make sure that we wouldn't be here possible without Rutgers Business School, who is our statewide host, as well as SBA, who provides funding for the Small Business Development Centers, as well as the Business Action Center. So I want to make sure I just get some selfish plugs in there for all of our support that we have. So one of the things that I want to make sure is that people are completely aware of what the New Jersey Small Business Development Center Network does. So we provide no cost consulting, one-on-one consulting, as well as no cost to low cost training and webinars. So during COVID, we're not charging practically for anything on any of our webinars. So we're really doing a good job with trying to understand what the businesses' needs are and putting on the relevant training that businesses need to be successful. One of the things that I want to make sure that I mention, and this is sort of really reflective of the earlier presentation, is how we can help businesses through this application process. So through our one-on-one consulting, and I want to stress that, and we're doing everything still virtually right now, but hopefully we'll move into being able to actually see people in person as well. But we can help with the pre-registering. We can help businesses through some of their issues that they may have coming up if they're not registered properly with New Jersey. We can make sure that we can help along those processes to set them up for success, to be able to be eligible for some of these grants and resources that are available. We also tend to be the hub of resources because we collaborate with lots of different organizations throughout the state of New Jersey. We like to consider ourselves sort of the hub and come to the New Jersey SBDC network. We can actually do an analysis on your business, where you're at, and then get you to the right resource. One of the things that we heard, obviously, is financial assistance is really, really needed during COVID, right? And this is going to last way longer than whatever the new norm is going to look like. So what we've done is we put together a team of professional consultants that actually have expertise in financials, lending, banking, and also these types of grants that are available to help people and walk them through that. It's over 100 years of experience with CPAs and financial people and banker brokers and things like that. If you don't have a bank, we can help you find a bank. So I want to make sure that people are aware that we put together this capital team specific to actually help New Jersey small businesses to have access to these resources and these grants and programs that are coming out. There's a lot that's coming out. We also want to make sure people are aware, much like it was stated earlier, that if you apply for one, you might not be eligible for another. We want to make sure that we provide all of the businesses with the information and education that they can make the best choice for their business. Because obviously the Shuttered grant came out, and if you're an outdoor venue and arts and culture, things like that, if you apply for the Shuttered grant, you may not be eligible for any of the future PPPs and anything else. So we want to make sure that we sit down holistically with each business And one size doesn't fit all. We take it case by case business and sit down with each business and help them to understand what their needs are. Some of the other things I just want to mention that we found that were really, really important for small businesses were, aside from the capital and the capital team that we put together in response to that need, is cybersecurity in e-commerce. So making sure the businesses are fully aware that, you know, if you don't have an online presence, you may be irrelevant in the future moving forward, because unfortunately, not everybody's going to feel comfortable 100% at any given time to actually go to the brick and mortar store. So we want to make sure, again, that we're setting up the businesses for success. And what does that look like for each business to understand? Again, some of the things that we can help with, helping with the pre-registration, helping through the bugs of some of the things that are coming down, helping to understand whether you're qualifying for these grants and these loans, help you understand, as Elizabeth talked earlier about, what was your actual economic loss due to COVID, and we can help you with those analysis. So we can also look at helping for additional opportunities, what other programs and services you may be eligible for that you can apply for. But also, again, some of the targeted industries that we're looking at are the restaurants hit really, really hard. Service industries hit really, really hard. Small businesses, in our sweet spot really is 10 or less employees, but we serve all businesses 500 or less employees. And so I want everybody to know that they're eligible to come, whether a nonprofit, for-profit, even a religious institution can also be eligible to receive our services, but also childcare. And we've done specific programming for restaurants, and we're doing specific program for childcare providers as well. So I think that it's just really important for everybody to understand that there's resources and there's help that's out there. And the small business development centers can be that conduit for you to be able to realize what other opportunities might be out there. And again, once you're a client of ours, and there's no cost, so we're the best price in town. I like to say we're free, or not free, but you've already paid for the service. How's that? Because we get funds from the federal government, as well as the state, as well as local communities. So there's a lot of team effort going into the assistance that the SBDC can help businesses in New Jersey. So I want to make sure that we leave enough time for Q&A that's on there. Again, I really do like to leave with sort of a quote, a positive quote for businesses to know that the resources are out there. So my quote for today, and I take no ownership for this quote, but when you support a small business, you support a dream. And one of the things that the SBDC really truly does like to do is help help their dreams come true. And right now we're helping those dreams to stay true, to stay in business. And we really want to make sure that all of the businesses know we are here to help you. You're not alone, and there are resources that are available. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the New Jersey Small Business Development Center Network, and know that if you go to njsbdc.com, New Jersey Small Business Development Center, njsbdc.com, that's our website, and that's where we have recorded webinars that are on there. You can sign up to get one-on-one consulting, and I want you to know that we're here to help. So we're not going anywhere. We're here. We're going to make sure that these businesses are successful, and all businesses that were affected by COVID get the needed resources that are here. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And now we have about 15 minutes to get to some of your questions here. So we will we'll have the panel back here, and let's get to it. So our first question came from an anonymous attendee. The form says first comes, first served, but today on the presentation, we were told it's not first come, first served. Can the NJEDA just clarify which parts of this process are and are not first come, first served?
Okay. If I can?
Absolutely.
Okay. So first come, first served. What we're doing is that the registration is staggered. So the registration is staggered, like Liz talked about, into basically four different buckets. We're going to have a registration that we have the earliest registration On the 3rd of May is for anybody who did not apply for phase 3 funding or did not receive phase 3 funding. Doesn't matter. So if you didn't apply or didn't receive it, doesn't matter what kind of business you are, as long as you're as long as you're not a federally mandated sin business. So like legal marijuana or gambling or adult oriented and themed businesses, then you'll be able to apply on the 3rd. The next application window is open for our for restaurants and for childcare providers. And then the next application period is open for micro businesses and then everybody else. What we mean by that is that it's best to get in as early as possible. So it's like while we have separate buckets for all those, it's best to get in as early as possible.
I'm Jake from the EDA. I'm just going to jump in really quickly as well to add on to John's answer. So just to make it crystal clear for everyone, pre-registration, which is open right now until 5 p.m. on April 29th, is not first come, first serve. You need to pre-register before April 29th to apply for the program. That staggered process is the application, and that is first come, first serve. So pre-registration, not first come, first serve. Application, first come, first serve.
Thanks, Jake and John. Our next question comes from Peter. Is this program for businesses that are just starting? I incorporated after the pandemic occurred.
Right now, no. That you have to. So right now, after the pandemic occurred, in general, the business has to be operational and up and running by 15 February 2020. So you will have to have shown operations by 15 February 2020.
And to segue off that, Kelly, is this a business you might be able to work with in terms of some of that filed, that incorporated it once the pandemic started?
Absolutely. Please come visit us, and we're here and happy to help you.
Great. And just to hop off that, we had another question. What is the best way for a small business to schedule a one-on-one consultation with the NJSBDC to determine the best target grant and discuss qualification?
Sure. So if you go to our website and there's a tab called counseling, just click on that tab and you can register to become a client. It automatically generates based on your business zip code on which center is the closest to you. And then we'll reach out to you and get you scheduled for a one-on-one session.
Great. Thanks, Kelly. Our next question comes from Webster. I am pre-registered. What are some tips for completing the application process quickly once it opens up? Obviously, there's a lot of rush once any of these portals opens up. Do you guys have any tips on that?
Like the Boy Scouts, be prepared. Have all your documentation ready. Know your corporate name. Know your trading as name. Know your have your WR30s ready to go. Have all your information ready to access. I think that's the best thing. But it's be prepared.
And to segue off that, we had an anonymous question. Is there anywhere we can get an itemized list of the documents that they would need to have ready? Or
I
will
believe
that be in the slides?
that's in the slide deck that was presented, and we are also going to be adding a walkthrough of the application and a sample application to the business.nj.gov/COVID portal that has all the information about this program. So that will be up in the coming days. I don't think it's up quite yet, but it will be up soon.
Thanks, Jake. The next question comes from Cynthia. What determines the size of a grant that a specific business can receive?
For this program, it's your full-time equivalent count. So 0 to 5 in general is going to be up to $10,000. 6 to 25 is going to be up to 15, and then 26 up to 50 is going to be up to $20,000.
And I'll just take this as another opportunity to plug business.nj.gov/COVID. There's an online tool there that you can use to actually calculate your estimated grant size. So you can go in and answer a few questions and I'll tell you what size grant you could expect to get.
Thanks, Jake. And to segue off that, we have Linda here. What is the date for determining the number of FTEs? We might have addressed that, but it's probably worth repeating.
John, I see you were also jumping on this one, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the highest number of FTEs you've had over your prior, I want to say 8 quarters of WR30 filings. So the goal is to make sure that we are really providing assistance that would make up for the gap that COVID has created. So we want to go back. You get an opportunity to go back to when you really were at full capacity, because that's the number we want to look at.
Anything to add, John? I saw you were unmuting as well. Okay, great.
I don't think my colleague Jake said it better than I could.
Great, great. Sticking on the same topic here, can you clarify the definition of FTE? Is it only those that work 40 hours a week or a combination of 40 hours made up of part-time hours?
Good question. So what it's going to be is your general rule of thumb is to use your New Jersey WR30. And what's going to happen is that on that calculator, like Jake said, business.nj.gov/COVID, there's going to be a COVID grant calculator. You're going to be able to put in that salary that's reported quarterly to the state of New Jersey, and that's going to be able to determine what the FTE count is. And then from there, that will let you know how many FTEs you have. So you might have an employee. Let's say you are you're some kind of retail establishment where you have an employee who might only work 10 hours a week, and so they wouldn't be considered a full FTE. And so you might have a head count of 10 people, but their hours don't equal one full-time person. Whereas you might have one full-time person who has a salary of, $20,000 a quarter, and then they would be counted as like one full FTE. But that calculator will be able to give you that definition and then an idea as to the grant award.
Okay, great. Our next question comes from Eric. We are a small business with 2 partners working under an LLC, and there are no FTEs or W-30 filings. Can we apply as a micro business? We had a couple questions on some sole proprietors that don't normally file a WR30. Do you guys have any guidance on that?
Yes, businesses with 0 employees, sole proprietors, partnerships where it's 2 owners, those businesses can apply and they would be considered a micro business. That's correct.
Great, thank you. The next question comes from Kevin. We're switching gears here a little bit. How will applicants show an unmet need for funds? We've got a couple questions on this. How can you show that unmet need or what your business is in need for?
I think it's a couple things. So first thing that you're going to have to show is that you're going to have to show you will have to report out your revenue for 2020. So you will have to report out some level of revenue for 2020. And then on the back end, and so that's going to be self-reported. So you're going to have to certify to it and several other components. And then you'll also have to certify the aid that you've received. So that means anything from your PPP, EIDL, previous NJEDA loans or grants, any other loans or grants from any other federal, state, or local entity. Then on the back end, we'll be able to do an analysis and determine if there is unmet need, if there is an unmet need and what that is.
I just add to that too and again, I just want to state that this sometimes can be a little complicated for people, and just know that we have the experts can actually sit down with you and help you calculate your loss. And, because again, taken in consideration, did you get 1, 2, and 3 PPP? Did you get the EIDL? Did you get any of the others? Did you get any? We can actually help you and walk you through that to make sure that you're including everything, so you're not missing out on the opportunity. But again, remember, we've got some experts as part of our capital team that we put together to specifically help with businesses in these areas. So just know there's help. So
Thanks, Kelly. Next, we have Sergio. This is critical for my 501c3 nonprofit. We have no employees. They only use volunteers. Are they eligible, and is there any nuance to these kinds of organizations?
Yeah, so the nuance here is 501c3s with employees are eligible. 501c3 47s with employees are eligible in most cases. There is some caveats around organizations that do lobbying activities or organizations that only have religious faith activity. So there is some caveats around that, but you must have employees. So 501c3 without employees would more than likely not count would almost likely not count under this grant. However, if you do have employees that are on payroll, it would count.
Thanks, John. Our next question comes from Jack. Jack has been having trouble verifying his email on the website during the application process. It will not send him the verification link, and he can't move forward because of it. Who can he contact to straighten this out? And I think that would apply to anyone that might be running into any kind of issue. Who can they contact to try to resolve some of these things?
The best route to go for issues like that is to call the call center that we have set up, which is staffed by live, real people from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. That number is 844-965-1125. And they will be able to help you out with that. The other really important piece of advice is to be sure, if you haven't done it already, make sure you're checking your spam folder, because a lot of times common email providers will have filters set up that weed out emails that come from an automated source. And so make sure that you look in your spam, because it might have gotten picked up and funneled there and not come to your normal inbox.
And I'm just going to add to that a little bit more detail than what we went into before when I was presenting, but there's a couple different things. So we actually recently switched our application system, like our software system at EDA over the course of the past year. And those that came in for a phase 3 loan actually saw the new software system already. And so if you had applied for phase 3, you probably already have an account with us. This is not the same as pre-registration, but you need an account in order to pre-register. And I think that's kind of what we're talking about here. And so if you did have an account, you can use your same username and password as before. Now that said, if you don't have an account in our new portal system, and you type in your email when you go to do the whole pre-registration piece, you'll get a screen that pops up that says, we have your email in the system, but we don't have an account for you. Click on this link and we'll send you an email so then you click on the link, then you go to your email. And as Jake said, it could end up in your spam folder. I want to say the email comes with something like CRM, might be the email address that it comes from. And you click on that. It takes you back to the website and you can complete creating your account. So if that might be some of the questions that came up, I hope that helps. And then if it's not already in there, we can put the customer care number that Jake mentioned into the chat over here.
Thanks, Elizabeth. And I believe we have time for one more. If you are a 1099 insurance agent working through a larger insurance agency as an independent contractor, do you use your own business information or the information of the larger entity you are a part of?
If you are a 1099 contractor to a larger firm, you are your own business, so therefore you would treat yourself under your information and as a sole proprietor.
Thanks, Sean. Just to clarify more broadly, because I think we got one other question like this, if I have a 1099 employees, do they count towards my my payroll or my FTE count?
In almost all cases, no, because those 1099 employees are in theory their own companies. So they would be their own companies who would have the ability to file as sole proprietors under this program.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Yeah.
And everybody, that's about all the time we have for today. I want to thank our panel for joining us. This was really helpful. I hope the audience found it helpful as well. Very sorry we didn't have time to get to every question, but we would like to follow up with you and work with the NJEDA to get you answers to those. If you asked us a question anonymously, unfortunately, I'm not going to know who you were. So if you could follow up with our office directly, that would be great. Our phone number is 973-526-5668. You can also contact us through our website. That's sherrill.house.gov. We have a web form where you can ask your question there as well. Again, appreciate everyone joining us today, and I hope you have a great rest of the evening and enjoy your weekend. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.